the lyrics. And for those of you on Zoom that want to just pull up on your phone or on a device the words. So I sent one song to you guys, right? But there's another song. So we'll decide if we're gonna do just one song or two songs today, but they're both written by the same, thank you, the same songwriter. Oh, okay, fine. Okay. Here, you could take and pass. So there's two songs here. One of them, they're both by the same composer. One of them is, the first one is called Conversations in the Womb. So for those of you online, if you want to just put in conversations, oh, Julie, you just got a message from Memento. It looks promising. The smiley face on it. Momentum. So I'm hoping, I'm on spiel because I keep on checking my emails about that one. Okay, so Conversations in the Womb. Maybe bring it to Julie just to help you, and then I can help you after the class, Regina. Okay, so I'm gonna put on the music. We could look at the words, and it's basically like, it's what we were talking about last week. I thought last week's class was so interesting to talk about the soul and the different levels of the soul. So I want to add to it, okay? Because in my prep for today's class, I was looking at some information that's written in a book called The Derech Hashem, which is the Path of God, another Musar work, very deep, holy book. And I'm just going to add another layer or two to what we've already discussed. Because if you remember last week, we spoke about how the soul has like almost like 3 chambers to it. The innermost chamber, the neshama, is the untainted, doesn't change. It's pure, untainted holiness. Okay. And then there's the nefesh, which is like the emotions, depression, ADD, are the way that we are in the world, the energy we give off. And then there was the outermost layer, which is called the nefesh. I think I said it wrong. There's the neshama, the ruach, and the nefesh. And the nefesh, the most outermost layer, that's the layer that can sin. That's all the traits that we spoke about last week, right? We spoke about, here we go. Last week, we spoke about like personalities, desires, conscious, wisdom, memory, forgetting, the psychological depressions, things like anger, trust, worry, generosity, all those things, the midot, the character traits is that outermost layer, what we could actually change, our character, right? Within measure, that was last week's lesson, okay? Midah, measure. Okay, so now I'm gonna add another measure, another layer to it, okay? So just like, hold on, because and this is where, like, I guess the deeper we go into aspects of the soul, the more it's hard for us to really, truly understand, because this is not something that we could see. When you have a doctor cut open a body and look for something, right? Or take something out, something is, I don't know, disturbing, or a growth or something, God forbid, right? He goes in, he looks for it, he finds it, he takes it out, closes the body, and puts you on your way. And hopefully you're good to go, right? But a doctor that cuts open the body and looks for the soul can't find anything. There's nothing we could ever find or see, which is very hard for us human beings that are so used to seeing things. If we don't see it, how do we know it's there, right? Blind faith. I mean, some people, if you don't see it, I mean, scientific minds, how could you explain it, right? So you can't fully explain this. So now I'm going to add a few more layers to the soul that we can't fully understand. So just bear with me, okay? So now on top of the levels of the soul, we have other levels. So the soul is the connector between the upper world and the lower worlds. That's the only thing that connects the two worlds. Because in the upper realms, we have things like angels. Can't see them, but we know that they're there. There's actually, the Talmud says that there's an angel that stands above every blade of grass, wishing it to grow. we have angels. We know there's a beautiful understanding that every time a Jewish person says a blessing and someone else says amen, like it is true, so may it be, like just to say yes, it is true. Every time someone says amen to a blessing, an angel is born, a good angel that's here to protect us. So Adrian, next time you take a sip of your coffee, we're all going to say amen to your bracha, because there's a power in that. In fact, one of the stories I've been reading so much about the funeral that took place on Sunday morning in Israel, which there were over 1 million people in attendance, which was so incredible, just to wrap your head around who was the simple guy. And he was a man he lived in a hovel, a simple, I mean, there was nothing fancy about his life. From morning till night, he learned Torah and he was there for the Jewish people. I don't even think he had a cent in his bank account. Everything was for the Jewish people. Just such an inspiration of a human being. But so one of the things that I read was, so there was 1 million people, right? As I said in my video yesterday, I said there was a man said he was going to the funeral. So he opened his door and he walked outside and there he was, because you couldn't even move. The streets were, you saw a picture, I shared a picture on Facebook, just entire sea of black. You couldn't move anywhere. So what someone did, this is a cute thing. So there was this man, he's on a rooftop looking at the funeral. Everyone is cramming into every nook and cranny in Bnei Brak. So he was on the rooftop with hundreds of other people and they're all watching and part of this funeral. So he pulls out a biscuit from his pocket and he says, Baruch atah Hashem, Bareini name is or not, and hundreds of people, amen. Like, isn't that so amazing? Because that's the power of a blessing. We understand that there's power in putting out a good word and saying, Hashem, you exist, we believe in you. And then angels are created. Okay, so we all agree that there are angels. Now there's a flip side to the angel, which we will call, and I don't know enough about this, but if this is of an interest, we can look into it. I'm happy to learn it up. Not something that I want to, but there is the opposite of an angel, which is called, does anyone know? Shadim. Does anyone have any idea what that is? Shadim. It's or a shade, right? But shadim is the plural. S-H-A-I-D-I-E-M. I'm not sure how to, it's a Hebrew word, right? And we have these negative energies, even in the upper worlds. Okay, so, and I don't know enough to really talk about this, and it's something that we don't want to give too much energy to. So I'll tell you, my Babi Lola, she used to always tell us, she's the one from Sosnovitz, that every time we would like get dressed and go to a wedding, or we'd be all put together looking so beautiful, she'd say, oh, you need a red bandala, like a red string, something red against Ayin Hara. Red underwear, whatever you want. You have to wear something red to kind of push off the negative, the evil eye. So she believed in this so much, she gave power to it. Now, there is an idea that if you don't give power to something, it doesn't have power. It's almost like when my kids fight and they're really fighting, but I'm like, just ignore him and he'll leave you alone. Like if you don't fight back, the fight is over, right? It's almost the same. I'm always telling my kids, just like walk out the door and like, there's no one to fight with. He'll give up, right? So it's almost like the same idea. In how I see it, right? So, okay. So can we take a tangent for a second about this, the Ayin Hara, okay? So I'm gonna tell you guys something really crazy. I always have crazy stories, right? This is the craziest story probably of my life. I still cannot make sense of it at all. When I was engaged to my husband, we were living in Jerusalem. I was in a dormitory. He was already there for probably 5 or 7 years in Israel. So he knew like the hearts of Mea Sharim of all. I've never been inside someone's house in Mea Sharim. I was like, I didn't know anyone in that world. You guys know what Mea Sharim is? Like the heart of the ultra Orthodox world in Jerusalem. It's a very intense place. So we got engaged, and amen. We got engaged, and he says he's taking me to the Ayin Hara lady. Have you ever heard of this?
No.
A lady that deals with ayin hara. He thought I had an ayin hara, an evil eye on me.
Wow.
I don't remember why. I don't know. Well, maybe like my grandmother. Like my grandmother was always like, you have to wear a red bentala. You have to have like something red on you. Otherwise, you have to ward off the evil eye. Like it was a superstition. There's truth to it. Like it does exist. We do have these concepts. You grew up with this. So there's truth to it. So Gadi says, I want to take you to the ayin hara lady. So I'm like, being the granddaughter of Babi Lola, I'm like, I have to go. Of course, sign me up. It was the weirdest thing I've ever experienced. I go into this little house, like, you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
I sit down in the kitchen.
She takes phone calls.
Yes. Okay, wait, hold on. Let me just explain it, and then it's crazy. Over my head is a pot. They're pouring lead, hot molten lead, into the pot, over my head, in a pot of water. Literally, this like lady like holding a pot over my head with there's lead happening, right? Right, exactly. And it formed a ball in the water, and then she would take the ball out with tongs. She would analyze the ball, and she would see how many eyes, how many like bumps, or like kind of like, you know, like bubbles were. And I don't know. I didn't have a lot of ayin hara. I didn't have, but she said like there's two. So she would pour it again, put it back in, pour it in over it, and until all the bubbles were popped. So that was such a weird experience. I mean, because we were American, we paid in American dollars. Usually it's like, you know, you pay something for I wouldn't call it an experience. I'm not making fun of it either. This is her tradition. She had her bubby Lola, like mine, that was telling me to put on a red bandole. She had her transmission of this custom, right? Lori, you also grew up with this, I could tell.
Every single, I couldn't jump over my sister.
Because she'll never grow if you jump over her, right? We should have a class just on bubamaises, right? But so
I couldn't look at anything. You can't look at anything ugly. You can't go to the zoo.
Yeah. Right. That's actually a Jewish custom. It is a Jewish custom. Well, so that's the thing. So it's hard to know what's tradition and what we would call bubamaises, like something like, you know, like a story that was made up, or, you know, I mean, we grew up with a lot of strong things from our grandparents, like if you have a tattoo, you're not going to be able to be buried in the cemetery. Is that truth, or is that bubamaisa? It's a bubamaisa. Would we ever not bury a Jew in a Jewish cemetery? Never. Even God forbid someone that was a terrible person, right? What?
All the kids.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, what did you say? Someone said something over here. Is it
18.
Doris?
Don't tell the kids.
Right, but we told the kids why, to maybe because we wanted to scare them off.
Right.
Right. So there were so it's important to kind of take a step back, and knowledge is power. So to know what is real, we never make fun of traditions. Like traditions have power to them. And especially like, you know, some people are very into their traditions. We're coming up to Passover, where it's all traditions, right? Like it's not like there's only a few mitzvot in the Torah. Don't eat bread, have matzah. And all of a sudden, Chabad only eat vegetables that could be peeled, so they won't eat anything with a peel, right? And the way, and it's beautiful for them if that's their tradition and they're upholding it. Kudos to them. We're not making fun of any of it, but we kind of have to know what's real, what's law, what's tradition, right? Like, and something else that you need to know, and this is important, that when we take on a tradition, or when we take on a stringency of Judaism, if a stringency, we call it like mahudar, like, you know, certain people will, I don't know, there's the letter of the law, and then there's so much of it is not actually law. It's just how we've taken on more and more and more. So I'll give you an example, simple example. When I married Gadi, he kept a high level of kosher. It's called Chalav Yisrael. And you guys have heard of it. Yeah. It's like only eating milk that was milked by a Jew, right? Which is really easy when you're living in Israel. So stupid me, I was like, yeah, I'll take it on. We're going to be living in Israel. But now, I mean, imagine living in Denver, Colorado, where you could only get Chalav Yisrael in one store and they would run out every week. If you didn't get there on the day, you didn't have milk for the week. I had 6 kids, right? Portland, Oregon, we had to bring, Chalav Yisrael only came in from Seattle, 2.5 hours away. So here I am. I could have easily said, this is too hard. And you could do something called Hatarat Nidarim, where you like kind of, you get rid of your neder. You stand before like a beit din, like three people, and you say, I'm absolving this promise that I made. You could easily do that. But I kept it all these years, which is really phenomenal. But if at any point I felt unhappy about it, or I didn't appreciate it, or it was dragging me down, it's not a mitzvah to take something extra on that doesn't feel beautiful to you. Everywhere. Here it's hard not to get it.
Yeah.
Any Jewish store you go to is all Chalav Yisrael. Here it's like a joke. It's like, I don't even feel like I'm doing anything special anymore. I feel like I need to take on the next level. But it's funny, when we had Rabbi Zenworth a few weeks ago, so he was coming to us for Shabbat when we were out of town, right? No, when Gadi was out of town. And so I said, is there anything, like, are you allergic to anything? Is there anything special that you eat, don't eat? So he upped my game a little bit, because he said, well, I only eat yashan. Do you guys know what that is? So that's also, it's a mehudar, it's something like extra, like an extra stringency in the laws of kosher. I'm like, I've never done that in my life, but it's only eating flour that was harvested like a long time, that the flour has time to sit. And I don't even understand it. I've never, and I don't think I ever will take on that stringency. So I'm like, I'm not even asking about it. So it's different to Shmura Matzah. So Shmura Matzah, let's say, is another stringency. Pesach is full of them.
Yeah.
People really have their, and it's so beautiful because Pesach is all about transmission and Misorah and passing things down. So it's almost like some of the customs that we do are to us like law. They're so, okay, I want to give you one more. This is, I actually sat one time I was flying to Israel. I sat next to a Hasidic woman, young woman my age. This is like 10 years ago. So I was like a young mom. I was flying from Israel to Canada, and I'm sitting next to this woman. I had so many questions to ask her. So I wanted to know if she shaves her head, because we both cover our hair, but I heard that Hasidic women shave their heads for high levels of the mitzvah, of not having any hairs, for such holy, lofty. It's not law. None of it is law. It's their custom that when they go to the mikveh, when they immerse in the mikveh every month, there's no chatzitza. There's nothing between them and the waters of the mikveh. That's one of the reasons that they do it. So I was like, tell me. So what was so beautiful, she was very honest with me. She although she dressed totally Hasidic, she herself chose not to shave her head, contrary to what we saw on unorthodox, right? Where the bride was crying and the mother-in-law is shaving her head, and you're like, I mean, everyone's heart is broken. So she said, no, I chose not to, because my husband and I, when we were Chassan and Kala, we had a conversation about it, and we didn't feel that it was something that it didn't talk to us. So because it's a chumrah, something extra, a stringency, you don't take it on if you're not there. I loved her honesty, because she might have felt bad, like that she's not there, where like maybe her sisters are or whatever, but she was so real. And we had a whole 2-hour conversation on the flight about minhag and only taking things on if you feel like it's beautiful for you. Yeah.
Me. And there's a lot of me in my family. And for example,
Minhag is custom.
yeah, my father, not like raised me. So I'm Rosh Hashanah. Instead of having a two apple for a sweet new year,
We have the green one.
he had Granny Smith apples. And we continue to have Granny Smith apples because it was explained to me that if it's not against it,
Right.
you keep the men out of your heart.
Yeah.
That what he did is fantastic.
Love it.
For the baby, and this is why we do.
It's so beautiful. It's really beautiful. And imagine, like, for so long after that, you're bringing back the memory of their great grandfather. And so people can I share something really sweet. Adrienne Gold, she says that her mother, or maybe it was her grandmother, she always made the brisket for Rosh Hashanah, for all the holidays, in the same way. She would cut off the ends and bake it. And you know, and that was tradition. And then finally, she asks her mom, like, why did Bubby always cut off the ends? And she says, to fit it into the pan. But it became like, you know, Torah Misinai, like, you know, Moses, like, this is it. This is the word of God, right? So it's good to kind of ask why. Why do we do this, right? I mean, I want to hear it. Laura, you had something.
No, something like that too, because I have an aunt that had 5 daughters, and she had many grandchildren. Never tell how many. She would never-
For an ayin hara. Yeah.
Counting, and people say, oh, how could she never
Yeah.
really count?
Right. So that's actually law. There is a law not connected to that, because we say, you know, how many kids we have, we do that, but you're not actually allowed to count
Not one,
people.
not two.
And we
Right.
learn that from the Torah when Moses takes a census, it's
Yeah.
with the half shekel, with a coin, and he counts the coins. So if you want to count people, I'll tell you how my dad taught me when I was a child how to count people. So there's a pasuk, like a phrase in the Torah that has 10 words in it. And he memorized it. It's Hoshea et Amecha, Uvarech et Nachalatecha, Urim v'Nasem ad Olam. Okay, so we memorized that line, beautiful line in the Torah, 10 words. And when you go in and you're counting, how many people do we have for a minyan? You need 10. You can't count people. So you Hoshea et Amecha, Uvarech et Nachalatecha. So that's where it comes from. That might be, and that's actual law, that we don't count people.
Or the shade accounts.
Yeah, there's probably many ways. I loved how my dad taught me that. And ever since I'm a child, I'll never count people, because it really stayed with me. He learns a pasuk off by heart, and he counts using the words. So yeah.
Something about wrapping when you put someone on. Boy.
That's very cute. Creative. That's really cute. That's really, really cute.
And that's how we taught them to.
Right.
that-
Yeah. Interesting.
but
I mean,
don't
there are so many. I mean, here's another custom. I mean, we could go on and on about customs, but another custom, have you ever heard that you don't cut your nails in order?
Oh, no.
Oh,
You don't cut your nails in order. And this is something that I do even when I'm cutting my little kids' nails. I won't do it in order. And
Wow.
I think it's because when you're working on a dead body and you're clipping the nails, you go in order. Another custom is not to have 2 people work on one person at the same time, like manicure, pedicure, like to have, you know, 2 people. And that's also because that's how we work on bodies. So we're not there, and we don't want to evoke any of that. There are a lot of, like, we could call it bubamaises, but a lot of them there's reason to them. And it's interesting. I actually, if you guys want to do more about this in another class, I have a book on all the different customs and the reasons behind them. And it's such a great book. We could do a couple classes on it. Yeah.
Was when you sewed a
Yeah, you
button.
have to put thread.
The Hawaii. I don't want to.
Oh, wow.
So,
On a person?
is when you put in front of them.
Oh, wow.
And so
Wow.
the
Yeah.
way to tell God is
Right. Wow. Yeah. So there's a lot of that. Yeah. You've done that. Okay, so there was no big uproar when I brought up the idea of these evil spirits, right? We have the malachim, right? The good spirits that we could create, the angels that protect us, and then we have what we call the shadim, which I don't know enough about, but it's a little different, but I guess how we would explain the evil eye, like the negative influences out there. They're always here. They're in the world, right? We can't avoid them, but we don't need to give so much energy to them. That's personally why I don't know much about it, because I don't think about it, right? Ayin Hara, the evil eye, it exists, but the more you put into it, the more it's a reality in your life, right? At a certain point, I just had to not give it so much energy, even though I was raised with such a huge concept of it. Oh, with the pot over my head. So how did I feel when I left? So back in the day, 20 years ago, when I was a new bride and my Khatan said he wants to take me to the Ayin Hara lady, I was like, this was the most spiritual experience of my life. Now, 20 years later, with a lot more life experience, I'm like, what the heck were you doing? Like, what the heck? Like, we gave this lady, like, seriously? Like, and my husband agrees. We actually just spoke about it on Shabbat. I can't remember why, but I think I was reading in one of the Jewish publications and it had something about this woman, because now she was an older lady, now her daughter does it. It's still something that's done, and Yerushalmi people that live in Jerusalem, they use her regularly. You know, a bride can't get married, you know, take her to the Ayin Hara lady. It's like 911, like it's like a house call, you know, like, so, and she even does it over the phone. Someone mentions it. Lori, you mentioned this, right?
Yes.
You could call her and she'll do it over the phone from America.
Oh, come on.
I promise you, Sue. I promise you. And she's not a, by the way, she's a holy Jewish woman.
Yes.
She is legit, the real deal. I'm not making fun.
In person,
In- Yeah. Mhm. I've done energy work over the phone where she's like, raise your hands. You know, it depends. If you believe in it,
Yeah.
then it works. Like, I mean, is anyone here into homeopathy? Okay, so there was a period of time that I was very into it. A Rebbitzin, an amazing Rebbitzin of mine in Seattle, she got very into it and she was coaching me on the phone. Okay, it's very Seattle, very Portland. But I have to tell you the funniest thing. So she gives me, so I worked with her a couple times. It was like therapy, honestly. I love it. I could talk to anyone. It was so much fun. But she gives me a remedy. Okay, this little vial, go into like the Whole Foods store. They have a little section of these little remedies. And it's crazy how it's like the more diluted it is, the more powerful and potent it is, right? So it makes no sense because it's really the way our physical world is quite the opposite. So it's like the very, very smallest diluted in sugar little thing, you put it under your tongue. So this is the funniest thing. So I'm sitting in my office in Portland. I worked in an office with a bunch of men. I was the only woman in the office. And my bag was on the counter. And I think my bag spilt over and this little vial fell out. So the rabbi, my colleague, Rabbi Goldblatt, we had a brother-sister relationship. He was always teasing me. So he said to me, oh, you're really into that? And I was into it. So I said, yeah. So I said it's helping me overcome my fear of public speaking, because like that was always such a great fear of mine. I could hardly give a class. So I said, yeah, it's really working. So I said, but you know, sometimes I forget to take it. So I said, but it doesn't really matter if I take it or not, because as long as I carry it with me in my purse, it's doing the work. Because that's how this is how the teacher, it's mind over matter, but that's how it actually works. That's how they told me it works. Like if you're having it in your pocket, it's actually doing the work. So he just packed up laughing. He made fun of me for the next 2 years about it, right? But Paula's holding a little card. What is that? Your traveler's prayer. And you might not say it. You could barely read those letters. It's so teeny.
But it's not so much to have it with you whenever you're traveling. You're carrying it with you. And therefore,
Right? So yeah. So basically, so it's the same idea of
and I don't know now, but
I love it. I love it. So beautiful. That's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. But isn't it amazing? So that's really amazing. So it just shows like we're spiritual beings. We might not physically be able to understand. How does that make sense? That if you carry a little card with you, you're protected.
Yeah, right. Oh,
But- Right. So when you go to Israel and you go to the jewelry store, it's all the eyes, the chamsa, all these these amulets of some sort that, and I guess we're really a superstitious people in a way. You could call it superstitious, but maybe it's just like there's actual meaning to all of these amulets and all of these symbols that we're going to connect to. We really believe in a higher, even if we don't see it, we believe it. So let's get back to the soul. Okay, Paula, is there something you want to?
I just wanted to say that,
Yeah.
my parents became worried. And then I was
Right. All the differences.
They can't hurt, and it might help. That was always the philosophy.
Right.
Not the idea that you're giving it power, which is a brand new concept here,
Mm.
for me, but that, what does it hurt?
Mm,
And so that was sort of how it got wrong.
mhm.
It can't hurt.
So I'll tell you where it could hurt,
Of course,
because I think it could hurt actually. You know where it could hurt? If we misuse or misdirect our intentions. If we're putting the power into the amulet and not into what the amulet represents. For example, if you go to pray at the grave of a great person, right? That could be dangerous. Because what are we actually doing when we go pray at the grave? We're asking the deceased, the energy, the spirit that's still there, that hovers there, to take our prayers up high. They're a conduit for us. We're not praying to the one that passed. We're praying to God. Can you help us get up there to God? So I think all of the superstitions, we can't put our faith, our hopes in the actual thing, right? Here's another one. We're talking about segulat. These are like extra merits that you could do. Praying at the Western Wall for 40 days, right? So Batya Bird, Gershon Bird's wife, is right, who Leonard and Isabella's daughter-in-law. You're reading about it. You reading the book? Secret, yeah. So before Gershon passed away, he started an organization called 40 Days at the Wall, or 40 Days. Okay, so that's actually, it's amazing. He started that organization and he left, thank God he left it for Batya. She's been running it ever since. And it's basically they hire scholarly people that live in the old city to go down and pray every day at the Western Wall and read all the names of people that are waiting for their marriage partners to be blessed with a child, to find a job, to whatever, anything that people are hoping and waiting for. So people live far away, can't do 40 days at the Western Wall. Even people in Israel sign up and have someone else go on their behalf to the Western Wall. So we can't lose ourselves that it's that this person is going to pray on our behalf and all of our hope is in that. That is just a conduit to hopefully the greater goal. So I think that is the fear, is that we don't lose ourselves in the details and forget what it's all about. Okay, let's move on. Okay. So we're getting back to the soul here. So I just added 2 elements, okay? Because last week we spoke about the 3, the neshama, the ruach, and the nefesh, okay? And now above the neshama, in the upper world, we have the world of malachim, of angels, and the shadim, okay? These negative forces up there, okay? Now, lower levels, lower worlds are everything physical. So we have the solar system, we have the water, the earth, all the physical worlds, the planets, everything that's in the lower world. Upper worlds are neshamas, okay? Neshamas and angels and the negative angels, okay? Now, let's take it a step down, okay? Step down. So you have a human being that has all those elements to him or her. The lowest level of the human being, as we said, was the nefesh. And the nefesh is actually split into two. There's the nefesh alyona, which is the higher nefesh, and the nefesh tachtona, the bottom nefesh. Okay, so even within the lowest level that we have of our soul, there's an elevated soul and a lower soul. Okay, and it's a little hard to understand this all, but let's take it one step down for a second. What comes after a human being with all the different intricacies of our soul? What's one step lower than a human? An animal. Anyone know how to say animal in Hebrew? Good. Behema, which spells out, it's two words. Ba-ma. Ba-ma. Bet-he, mem-he, which means what's in it is in it. What you see is what you get. Behema, it doesn't evolve. An animal, it's born with its instincts and it stays like that for its entire life. You'll never have an animal that's saying, I really feel bad that I pounced on that cheetah. I ripped it apart. I feel so bad. I mean, I have to better my ways, right? A human being, someone that is struggling, let's say a human being struggling with an addiction, which is very prevalent nowadays. Everyone has some addiction that they're struggling with. Even someone that is so giving into his temptations or his desires is still plagued with the idea that he could be better. Every human being, even take a Russia, a wicked person who is a murderer, like as wicked as they come, that person is still plagued at night, hopefully, with some elements of consciousness of maybe I should stop doing this. Maybe I could, and some of them might feel like maybe I'm too far gone. I mean, I'll just give up. But they're still going through a process in their mind that they should, maybe they could, maybe it's possible to change their ways. That's a human being because they have that higher soul. Animals they don't think about anything. They instincts, they do it, they pray, they kill, they eat, they're satisfied, and they don't feel bad about it. They don't have guilt. Oh, maybe dogs, and that's why we call dogs kelev, because like it's right. They kind of steal your heart, but there is a lot of heart in a kelev, in a dog. So I don't know yet. Well, think about it. What's the animal that's closest to human beings? So monkeys, chimpanzees, like from that family, right? And there's so many, you see evolution, and you see in the science museums like how, but as much as we could be very similar in some of our characteristics or the look or different things. I mean, does a chimpanzee feel bad? I don't know, actually, because they're really cute. Like when you see them in the zoo, they're kind of like they look so humanistic. Right. Especially if you see like how it's oh my gosh, enough. That's so funny. But so as much as we could be similar, but we're not, because animals are not, they don't have that element of soul. What you see is what you get. Whereas with a human being, you can't see the soul of a human being, right? You can't see it. Cut open, do the, you look everywhere. You will never see it. It's something that we feel. And our Jewish sources tell us that animals don't have that human soul. They might have an animal soul. They have a nefesh, just like when they die, it's just like a lifeless body, like a person, but they don't have what we're talking about, the soul, like this evolving soul it's not there. Yeah.
Whatever, they're right,
Evidence of their soul. I see soul all the time. Oh, in a second. So we are, but you have to train your eyes to see what you're not seeing. you're not seeing anything physical, you're seeing a light. There's actually a Hebrew saying, hadrat panim, it's like, or hadras panim, which is like, it's like a glow of the soul, like their face, like there's a light that emanates from great people, like we see this. So I see soul, you see a great sage, you see that light that they emanate from the world. Like in the piece that I shared yesterday on Facebook about this great rabbi, it said, like you would walk into the house was a dark house. It wasn't like there was like fluorescent lights everywhere. I mean, it was such a simple abode. And yet there was so much light in that place. It was spiritual light. Not everyone is trained to see that. But I personally think that if you look for it, you have to say, what's going on? Like, what is this? And I don't know if I probably shared this story a while ago. We were having a kumsitz, right? A sitting, and it was like a spiritual with songs and everything. And this man, he says to me, I'm feeling really weird. And I said, it's your soul. You're feeling your soul. He's like, he was a pre-med doctor, because this was a medical ethics program we used to run every summer. So he said, I'm feeling a little sick. I don't know what it is. I'm like, and it was before Corona, so it's not like, So I said, it's your soul. But he was not in touch with his soul on that level to say, like, what is this weird thing? But do you guys know what I'm talking about? When, like, a couple weeks ago, we had Hana, that was her name, Hana Brownstein, that beautiful young mom with her little baby, and she's sitting here and her eyes are closed and she's singing a few songs. And like Judy, you said to me, I've never seen anything so spiritual in my life, right? Right, we felt it, exactly. So I think we're all attuned to it, and I think there are levels, right? Okay, so now, lots of different levels to this. Now let's go to physical things for a second, because in Judaism we have laws or commandments to take something physical, and by doing that, it opens up a pathway to spirituality. So one of the craziest laws, I mean, I always think, like, if non-Jews would just like peek into our world sometimes, they'd be like, they're crazy. It's confirmed, right? So they don't need to, no, but it's no, but we know that it's not crazy. This is our life. So I'll give you an example. If someone peeked in to our synagogue on Sukkot and sees a bunch of people holding branches and a lemon, okay, and walking around the bima, shaking them like crazy, I mean, what would people think? Yet the mitzvah is to take a physical branch, to shake it, and you are now accessing the merit of doing a tremendous mitzvah that you could only do once a year. And this is the mitzvah of the whole holiday, just to take this branch and shake it. And you think about how people, what great lengths they went to in generations past, during the Holocaust, in shtetls, where the whole shtetl could only secure one set of 4 species. And that cost so much money and dangerous travel to bring these 4 species together. And people would wait in line and give anything to just shake it and make a blessing. Is that crazy? Something physical is the only way to access something spiritual. Here's another example. In a couple weeks from now, we're all going to be sitting at a royal table set for kings, leaning on the side, and that moment is going to come where we take these very expensive crackers and we eat them. And yet this is a mitzvah deoraita. This is a mitzvah that is in the Torah. There are so many mitzvot about this matzah, about this holiday. The highest thing is to eat this matzah. Now, what is it? It's water and flour. It's baked fast. And even when we're eating it, to close our eyes, we need to lean, we're literally, I know, and then we get, what's it called? Constipated, and we pay the price. But so yeah, it comes along with everything, and like after a whole week, but it is but this is the only way to access the spiritual realm. There's nothing you can't, like, I'm gluten free, I'm this, I'm that. You have to, I mean, there are ways of doing it gluten free, there are spelt and this and that, and those are even more expensive, just saying, $40 a box. How is it? Yeah, that's something physical pathway. Totally. Mhm. Not the only way. Totally not. So, but prayer is all spiritual, right? I mean, using our mouth, but it's all like prayer. And that's why it's so hard for people to relate to prayer, because we're such physical beings that to like get in the headspace of having a conversation with God, we're just, it's hard. So that is more of a spiritual commandment or mitzvah. But right. 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 And there are, I mean, Shabbos is probably also completely spiritual. I mean, we need, in order to observe Shabbos, we do use physical things, wine for kiddush, hamotzi, challah's food, clothing, you know. Right, right, right. So it's, so yeah, so you have like this, you have like this, but for a mitzvah, like the mitzvah, the positive commandments of eating matzah, you can't do that mitzvah without the matzah. That's why they were baking matzahs in concentration camps. They were risking lives in Siberia and right, or sentenced to death, right? Right? I mean, think about it, like there were blood libels about the matzah in France, and there's so much history about these matzahs. They would use it to you know, as to put us, yeah, and yet there was never a time that we didn't try to have matzahs. So there's a lot of sacrifice to just have this physical thing, because that's the pathway. So for example, this past week on Sunday, I made challah with Sue and Adrian and some other ladies, and yeah, Laura, Julie. Okay, we made challahs. They're all, you guys could take challahs to all of your friends. Please, please, please. We only have a few weeks. We have to get rid of them all. We have to move them, move the stock before Passover. So what's so amazing is when we take a little portion and then we raise it up and we say, this is challah, right? That little portion that's symbolic to us taking a tithe and bringing it to the priest. We're holding this up. We're actually accessing the infinite. The merit, the mitzvah is the taking away of something, which is counterintuitive to how we think in this world. If you take something away from what you have, you're usually left with less. But in the spiritual realm, you're left with more. Yeah, it's not that. Yeah. So I think there are probably many examples of taking a part of you, or in the last 2 weeks, Parshios, we're talking about the sacrifices. So we've been talking about giving a little bit of yourself, right? When you give of yourself, a sacrifice of any sort, like giving something up that's hard for you to do, then that's actually that opens up the door to the next level of stepping up in your spirituality. So there is a book that I wanted to reference. Has anyone seen this book, Battle Plans, by Rebbetzin Sipora Heller and Sarah Yocheved Rigler? Okay, so you know, I'm sure Sarah Yocheved Rigler is the one that we spoke about the souls, right? So this is an incredible book. It's very, very on point with everything we're discussing. And I want to just bring the analogy of a battlefront, okay? That wherever we are on our spiritual journey and wherever we take steps towards, the battlefront is always changing, okay? So I'll just read you a little bit from Alan Marinas, okay? So let me just find, here we go. So he talks a lot about the points of choice that we make, that really, right, with you know how he says that this is our spiritual curriculum, like changing ourselves is like we have a curriculum that's set out for us. So the first part, last week we did a whole chapter on the soul, and we are just talking a little bit more about the soul, but he says now we have something else that fights us, because we have the soul that wants to do good, wants to connect, and then we have an inner adversary that is opposing us. Does anyone know, what would we describe that as? The Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination. Okay, so we have these forces even within us. We have the soul that's seeking good, and then the Yetzer Hara that's telling us, don't do it, don't do it. It's really not so good for you, because it's trying for us, to hold us back. So let me just find this story. Okay, here we go. So this is the story, Rabbi Eliyahu Dessler. Okay, he says that, so we have these points in our life, which we call bechira. Bechira is choice or free will. Okay, and he says that there's an inner battle that's happening within us. It's alive for you, and you could go either way with a decision. Okay, so at every point you are at, there's a battle in front of you with your free will and your choices of how you're going to go. Okay, so this is the example. When two armies are locked in battle, fighting takes place only at the battlefront, right? As soon as you move forward, what's behind you is pretty much safe. It's only at the battlefront that the struggle is happening at that moment. Territory behind the lines of one army is under that army's control, and little or no resistance needs to be expected there. A similar situation prevails in respect of territory behind the lines of the other army. If one side gains a victory at the front and pushes the enemy back, the position of the battlefront will have changed. In fact, therefore, fighting only takes place at one location. Okay, so I'm going to give an example, practical example. Okay, I have never eaten shrimp, ever. So when I see shrimp on a commercial, on an ad, I don't know, walk by a restaurant, I'm walking outdoors and someone's eating shrimp, I have no desire to taste the shrimp. I will never eat that shrimp in my whole life. The only one reason I would ever eat that shrimp is if someone is holding a gun to my head and says, eat the shrimp or die. That's the only way I will eat that shrimp. But I would, even if I would have to, for such, God forbid, I would hate every moment of it, because I have no drive towards it. Whereas I'm not going to ask anyone to give an example if they love shrimp, but if someone grows up with shrimp and then along their life they hear that it's not kosher for a Jew to eat shrimp, that there's actually spiritual ramifications to eating shrimp, and that person has to now pull themselves away from the shrimp, it could be the hardest battle of their life. Okay, now that person that gives up shrimp, okay, might become, let's say, a Baal Tshuva, might become kosher. And by the way, there's like, we have all these kosher things now that look like shrimp, that taste like shrimp. There's crab, there's, right, what's it called? Imitation crab, all that stuff. They even have them in the same, they literally sell them in the shape of shrimp. Yeah, unbelievable what they have nowadays, right? Great. So that person who's come so far, given up shrimp, has his fake shrimp, he's fine. He's a Baal Tshuva for decades. Okay, now he's given shrimp in front of him. Does he still have the same Yetzer Hara, evil inclination, or desire to eat that shrimp? What do you guys say? No. Why? Exactly. So his battlefront has now changed. Okay, and the battlefront might be a much higher thing. Maybe this person is deciding if he should keep Chalav Yisrael, that example that we used before, like the highest, and maybe that's the battle for him, right? Or maybe it's a totally different battle. But we have to understand, like that analogy that Rabbi Dessler gives, that the front is always moving, and at every what? Oh yeah, except in Ukraine, where yeah, Alavai, that front should move a little bit. But so our fronts in our world, our inner battles are always changing depending on where we get to, right? And how much work we put in. And that's really where it is. That's where it's at. Okay. So I questions, because I do want to do that song for us to close this out. Yes. Mm.
You need us back. You're in our thoughts. And that's what
Mm.
we can do. And we're all on our own journey, whatever we're going.
Mm.
Where we want to be in the process.
Mm. It's so beautiful. Mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think, and that's why we can't really judge anyone, because we're all at our own battlefront. Is she okay? Okay. Okay.
Oh, the thing.
Yeah. So just to respect the journey that we're always at, which is so interesting, because there is a mystical idea that what? Oh. Mm. Right. I wow.
Yeah.
Well, what I wanted to say, so wherever you get to is, I mean, it's amazing to see the growth of an individual, right? It's just amazing. Like, so just like you have a friend that's been growing, it does not, let's put Judaism aside. You have a friend that is evolving and becoming such a giving person, such a kind-hearted person. Put Judaism aside, just a good human being. There's a certain awe that we all feel in that person's presence, right? So depending on where a person takes himself or herself to in life with the work that he or she puts in to his evolving growing path is how we get to. So to bring a little a mystical concept to that when it comes to souls and marriages. So I'm gonna give you a little shocker. It's your takeaway for today. So actually we have 7 Besharets. Has anyone heard that?
No.
There are 7 destined ones. No, Besharets. You have a person is born into this world with 7 levels of who their destined one is. This is like a very mystical concept that we can't really understand. But sometimes, like when you explain it to people that have been married numerous times, they're like, oh, you know, but I get it. But more than that, I've only been married once, thank God, right? But before I married Gadi, I was actually engaged to be married. I don't know if anyone knew that, right? I did tell Risha. Okay, so I wasn't officially engaged. Like, I hope my mother's not on this. She's not. Sometimes she comes on. But meaning I was wearing a ring on my finger from my high school sweetheart, and I thought he was it. He was my besheret. That was it. We were talking about wedding plans, and thank God, I saw what I needed to see. Hashem made it very clear to me that I should take a step back. And that's actually when I did a lot of inner soul searching and a lot of work. And it was a very painful time in my life. And I went into a massive depression because I needed to, and Hashem, that's when I got terrible acne. I don't know if did I ever tell you guys that? Terrible acne. Like I couldn't go out on the streets of Jerusalem without someone like, you know, an Israeli person like giving me advice, like what I should do. Like it was so bad. So I literally just stayed in my room and I had a very dark period of time, but it was what I needed to let time heal and to space myself from the people that were really pulling me down because I was in a bad chavra. And then a couple months later, I was like on my feet again. And this time I was different. And this time I had a very different vision, very different goal. Like Hashem really blessed me. That depression was the best thing that ever happened to me because it gave me clarity. And it was a year later, I was introduced to Gadi. I was a different person. I literally, and I don't even have too many pictures from my past life because I ripped them all up because I was so embarrassed. I mean, I wish I had them now because now I'm okay to hold all parts of myself and to be okay with who I am and how I've evolved. I think it's actually very beautiful. back in the day, I was just so humiliated that I couldn't appreciate it. So this idea of having different Besherets, he was for sure my Besheret for where I was at that time, where I wasn't so evolved. But a year later, I merited a different Besheret. I merited my Besheret, I think, which is hopefully my main Besheret, my number one Besheret, my husband, Gadi. But so it's just interesting to know that, like that to me describes the battlefronts, because it's always changing. It depends where you're pushing yourself to get to. Wherever you push yourself, that's where you're met. That's where you're met with your challenge. That's where you're met with your Besheret. I'm not only talking about your destined one, I'm talking about everything in your life is Besheret for where you find yourself at, for how much you push yourself. God will meet you with everything else you need at that time. Laura, you're shaking your head.
Yeah, I mean.
I'm finding the song while you're shaking your head. Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
No, I understand what you're saying, but then it doesn't always work out that way. And that's what you said.
What do you mean?
Like with your, I'm not saying anything, I'm fine, but like I know someone and she's been a widow for 30 years. And she is such like wonderful person, this and that, and she still hasn't had to share. So that's why.
Right.
That's
So,
yeah.
okay. So do you want to pull this apart for a minute?
Yeah.
Okay. So everyone has a Besheret, and everyone has a Besheret for where they're at. And there are probably seven, I don't know, options, like door A, door B, like meaning where you are, where you put yourself, and the work that you do will bring you to the door. And we believe that everyone has a Besheret. It's your half soul. So of course there are many people that are still looking for their half souls. Of course, this is not.
Right.
No one says it's easy to find your Besheret, but we believe in the concept of a destined one. It doesn't mean it's easy. And actually, I mean, the matches, I mean, there's actually a shidduch crisis going on in the Jewish world right now, where there are so many more women to men. There's a crisis going on. So it doesn't, I still believe in the power that everyone, I mean, could you imagine if we just gave up, oh, we don't have a destined one? I mean, everyone would just give up. No, you always believe, if you're looking, if you want it, he must be there. God didn't forget about you. You know, everyone has, because your soul was split into two. So he has to be out there somewhere. And if not him, or if you don't get to that one, so there is this mystical concept that there's actually 7 out there, depending on where you get to. But I think, I mean, it's a hard concept, but I think if we hold on to hope, I think that's probably the most important thing we could have.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, not easy when you're looking. Okay, I'm gonna play the song. If you guys want to take a copy. Okay, so there's 2 songs here. Okay, so the first one is about the soul. It's called Nishamale. Do you guys want to listen from where you are? Maybe I'll just do part of it and we'll do the second one. Okay, so you guys know Nishama, Nishamale. It's like an endearing way of saying soul, like my little soul. So who do you think is saying come with me? So either, or maybe the angels. I think the angels, the ministering angels, would bring the souls down. Do as you're told. There's a little child waiting to be born today. You're to be his spark, his soul. Okay, so now the neshama is going to talk. No, I don't want to go.
There is so much pain and evil on the earth below. Let me stay here up in heaven where it's safe and I'll be pure. Please don't make me
So this is like the conversation between the angel and the soul. So they're so afraid to come down to this world. There's so much pain and evil.
Little Neshama, it's time you faced your destiny. As we fly beneath the clouds now, I will show you there is so much you can be. Yes, dear mother, I can see the share over there. Someone's learning Bible. There's another deep in prayer. I will stay here if you answer me. That's all I need to know. You must promise me, dear friend, that I too will be like that.
So the Nishama wants to make sure that he could become he could be holy on earth.
It's a task that I must do. As I tap you on the lip, you will fall.
So that's what the Nishama does, right? Right. Laura, you know about that? That the soul, the Nishama, the Malach, the angel, taps us on the lip. That's why we have the indentation over here. Yeah. And then we forget all the Torah that we've learned. Sorry? Yeah, in the womb. He's ready to be born into the world. So there's the body is ready to meet its soul to come into the world. Yeah, it's so beautiful. Okay, I'm just gonna stop the song. So it is such a beautiful song. So and it ends by saying, "There's no need to fear your destination. You've earned a place right by the throne." Okay, so meaning you could be in this world and you could still earn your place in the next world, like in the spiritual realms. Okay, it's I love the song. But flip it. We're not going to have enough time to do the song of it. But okay, can I just tell you about the next song? It's called "Conversations in the Womb," and it's two twins that are in a womb together, and you know, and they're seeing such an empty, cold existence, right? Don't deny that you see it's only you and me, right? And so it's one brother to the next. And so one of them is saying, you must have faith that we're not the only ones, because in the distance, there's a place where we'll stand up tall and straight. Oh, I believe that there is a world to come. Okay. So then the negative brother is saying, don't be blind, don't be stubborn, don't be set. Imagination, it's all right, but it won't light up the night. What you see is exactly what you get, which is what we are saying. Like, we don't see the soul. We don't see anything spiritual. We only see what our eyes show us, but we know and we believe that there's so much more to what meets the eye. So let's see if there's, okay, so basically such a powerful song. So the negative one says, my dear brother, where have you gone? Is this the moment I have known? I could faintly hear the cry. My dear brother must have died. It's all over. Now forever I'm alone. So then the other brother says, please don't mourn me when my life has just begun. What you hear are sounds, I'm gonna get choked up. What you hear are sounds of joy. Congratulations, it's a boy. Oh, I believe there is a world to come. So yeah, just to kind of, no, they're both being born. Yeah, one is born and he thinks everything I thought is true. It's all bleak, I'm all alone. And he says, this is actually the greatest moment. This is please don't mourn me when my life has just begun. Yeah. Right. So beautiful. So beautiful. Okay, everyone. Good to see you. Have a good day. Thank you for staying on a few minutes later.
Be well.
Bye. Good to see you. Hey, Susan.
Bye.
Hey, Rhonda. Hey, Lori. Jen, how you doing? Nadine, good to see you
Be
guys.
well.
Have a good
Bye-bye.
day.
It's good to see you.
Bye-bye.
Wonderful class. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.